The good governance is the concept which was elaborated in 1970s, which envisaged the effectiveness of the state in implementing its functions and obligations. The state should provide sustainable growth in economic sphere as well as social sphere and political sphere. The state is deemed as the major actor which provides the society with natural resources and also takes the role of the regulatory body which tries to handle all the issues and all the problems which can occur in the social sphere. The good governance is strongly connected with the national players. It means it is connected with the different states, but at the moment the concept of good governance can be also attributed to the supranational organizations, for example the European Union, which also can be the structure providing good governance within the territory of the European Union, which at the moment comprises 28 member states. The good governance is rather outdated concept in comparison with the other concepts which also take into account the situation with the governance in different states or on different levels as a whole. For instance, at the moment, one of the most modern concept is so-called good enough governance. Good enough governance envisage the implementation of the state of the minimum of its competences and its function as a state, and try also to take into account the risk which can occur with the development of social sphere, economic sphere and political sphere. The good enough governance can be attributed to the current situation within the European Union. That's why European Union as a supranational institution is much more susceptible to the risks of dissolution, with the risk of not effective governance as a whole. The European Union as political institution tried from the very beginning to use the model of good governance. It's in action. It envisaged actually the effective dialogue with all the levels of governance within the European Union. It means the systematic dialogue with the national governance, national level, also the dialogue with the regional level, and also the dialogue with the local level. As well, one of the major principles of good governance is the flexibility of governance within the European Union, and also the proactive role. It means actually the proactive reaction on different procedures and different processes within the societies of member states of the European Union which were underway. But at the moment there is a switch to the new model of the governance within the European Union, which can be attributed to the model of good enough governance. It means actually that the European Union tries to promote the minimum of effectiveness in action in order to decide and in order to solve different questions and different issues within the European Union. It concerns first of all the member states. The European tries also to play not the key role, but also try to play a rather selected role in solving and managing some conflicts and crises which occur within the European Union within the last years. It means actually that the European Union tries to have the regulatory function and try also to be an institutional framework for further deeds and further actions of the national governments concerning the different crises and different issues, such as finance problems, such as migration policies, and so on. The adoption of the good enough governance model of the European Union shows that at the moment the structure, the institutional structure of the European Union is rather vulnerable, and it should be strengthened in order to make the European Union more vivid and more decisive in solving some issues within the European continent. The decision-making procedures of the European Union are rather different, and they differ from the institution which implement the decision-making process. For instance, the European Council and European Commission and the Council of the Ministers, the so-called executive bodies of the European Union, use the unanimity of decision making and also the majorities to have some procedures, to have some documents passed. At the moment, one of the major procedures within the European Union is the unanimity of votes, which is implemented by European Union. European Union at the moment is a formal organ which has the supreme decision-making prerequisites within the European Union, and also comprise the head of the states. This is the body which at the moment plays the significant and the most active role in the strategic policy of the European Union. The majorities, this is the qualified majority or simple majority, is implemented by the European Commission and the Council of Ministers. At the moment, one of the major procedures concerning the majority decision-making procedure is so-called double majority. It means actually that the decision is accepted when 2/3 of the member states of the European Union, which has the 2/3 of the populace of the European Union, pass this decision, so they accept this decision and so on. The other decision-making procedures within the European Union comprise the interaction of European institutions, such as Council of Ministers, European Commission, and also the European Parliament. This is this triangle: European Commission, the European Parliament, and Council of Ministers has a lot of competence and a lot of functions in order to forge legislation and to provide this legislation, to pass this legislation. This is actually the specifics of the European Union, which is a supranational institution, has a different way of decision making. The mechanisms of implementation of decisions within the European Union depends on the body which actually get this decision passed. One of the major decisions which are passed, this is actually the decision by such institutions as European Council and the Council of Ministers. They usually pass the decisions in the form of regulations, which has some supreme power and have the competences all over the European Union. The other decisions, such as directives, decisions, and also decision recommendation, are passed by the European Commission as the main permanent body, executive body within the European Union. The mechanism of implementation of decision is strongly connected to the mechanism of interaction between the European Union with the member states, the national governments. It means actually that if the decision is passed and is promoted by the supranational institution, such as, for instance, European Commission in the form of directives, it should be accepted by the national governments. And if the national governments are against this decision, they can argue this decision in the European Court of Justice. Or if they are not comply to this decision, it can be something like an example of going to against the national government from the European Commission. For instance, the European Commission can make some sanctions and can also make some reduction for the European governments. It means actually for the European member states in form of reducing the financial assistance in form of imposing some harsh measures in order to get this decision passed and done. The interaction between the European Union and the member states, the national governments, has several ways and several folds. One of the things which should be mentioned is actually that the European bodies, first of all the executive bodies, such as European Commission and the Council of Ministers, and also the European Parliament to some extent, got the competences from the national levels. It means actually that some competences were transferred from national to supranational levels, and the European Commission, for instance, got some sovereign competences in order to promote the all-European policy and also to make the strategic development of the European Union as a supranational institutions. The interaction between the European bodies and member states, first of all, first line is actually the competences which can be transferred to the supranational level from the national level. The second line is actually the competences which are in the competence only of the national governments, member states. And the third line is actually the joint competences between the European Union and the member states. At the moment, the interaction between the European Union and the member states is rather tight and systematic, which enables actually the European Union be the mighty player not only on the supranational level but also on the national level. For instance, if we take the regional and local communities within the member states of the European Union, they can address to the European institution without addressing to the national governments. It means actually that at the moment the European Union is the supreme arbitrary, it's the supreme judge in handling several issues concerning even the national policy. For instance, the interactions between national and regional levels within certain member states.